Sahih al-Bukhari 2032. Narrated Ibn Umar. Umar asked the Prophet, I vowed in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance to stay in I'tikaf for one night in al-Masjid al-Haram. The Prophet said to him, fulfill your vow. Sahih al-Bukhari 2033. Narrated Amra. Aisha said, the Prophet used to practice I'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan, and I used to pitch a tent for him, and after offering the morning prayer, he used to enter the tent. Hafsa asked the permission of Aisha to pitch a tent for her, and she allowed her, and she pitched her tent. When Zainab bint Yash saw it, she pitched another tent. In the morning the Prophet noticed the tents. He said, what is this? He was told of the whole situation. Then the Prophet said, do you think that they intended to do righteousness by doing this? He therefore abandoned the I'tikaf in that month and practiced I'tikaf for 10 days in the month of Shawwal. Sahih al-Bukhari 2034. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet intended to practice I'tikaf, and when he reached the place where he intended to perform I'tikaf, he saw some tents, the tents of Aisha, Hafsa, and Zainab. So, he said, do you consider that they intended to do righteousness by doing this? And then he went away and did not perform I'tikaf in Ramadan, but performed it in the month of Shawwal for 10 days. Sahih al-Bukhari 2035. Narrated Ali bin al-Husayn. Safiya, the wife of the Prophet, told me that she went to Allah's Messenger to visit him in the mosque while he was in I'tikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. She had a talk with him for a while, then she got up in order to return home. The Prophet accompanied her. When they reached the gate of the mosque, opposite the door of Salama, two Ansari men were passing by and they greeted Allah's apostle. He told them, do not run away. And said, she is my wife, Safiya bint Huey. Both of them said, Subhanallah, how dare we think of any evil, O Allah's Messenger? And they felt it. The Prophet said to them, Satan reaches everywhere in the human body as blood reaches in it, everywhere in one's body. I was afraid lest Satan might insert an evil thought in your minds. Sahih al-Bukhari 2036. Narrated Abu Salama bin Abdurrahman. I asked Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, did you hear Allah's Messenger talking about the night of Qadr? He replied in the affirmative and said, once we were in I'tikaf with Allah's Messenger in the middle 10 days of Ramadan, and we came out of it in the morning of the 20th, and Allah's Messenger delivered a sermon on the 20th of Ramadan and said, I was informed of the date of the night of Qadr in my dream, but had forgotten it. So, look for it in the odd nights of the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan. I saw myself prostrating in mud and water on that night, as a sign of the night of Qadr. So, whoever had been in I'tikaf with Allah's Messenger should return for it. The people returned to the mosque for I'tikaf. There was no trace of clouds in the sky. But all of a sudden a cloud came and it rained. Then the prayer was established, they stood for the prayer, and Allah's Messenger prostrated in mud and water, and I saw mud over the forehead and the nose of the Prophet. Sahih al-Bukhari 2037. Narrated Aisha. One of the wives of Allah's Messenger practiced I'tikaf with him while she had bleeding in between her periods, and she would see red, blood, or yellowish traces, and sometimes we put a tray beneath her when she offered the prayer. Sahih al-Bukhari 2038. Narrated Ali bin al-Husayn, from Safiya the Prophet's wife. The wives of the Prophet were with him in the mosque while he was in I'tikaf, and then they departed, and the Prophet said to Safiya bint Huey, don't hurry up, for I shall accompany you, and her dwelling was in the house of Usama. The Prophet went out, and in the meantime two Ansari men met him, and they looked at the Prophet and passed by. The Prophet said to them, come here. She is my wife, Safiya bint Huey. They replied, Subhanallah, how dare we think of evil, O Allah's Apostle? We never expect anything bad from you. The Prophet replied, Satan circulates in the human being as blood circulates in the body, and I was afraid lest Satan might insert an evil thought in your minds. Sahih al-Bukhari 2039. Narrated Ali bin al-Husayn from Safiya. Safiya went to the Prophet while he was in I'tikaf. When she returned, the Prophet accompanied her walking. An Ansari man saw him. When the Prophet noticed him, he called him and said, come here. She is Safiya. Sufyan, a sub-narrator, perhaps said that the Prophet had said, "This is Safiya. And Satan circulates in the body of Adam's offspring as his blood circulates in it." A sub-narrator asked Sufyan, "Did Safiya visit him at night?" He said, "Of course, at night." Sahih al-Bukhari 2040. Narrated Abu Sa'id. We practiced i'tikaf with Allah's Messenger in the middle 10 days of Ramadan. In the morning of the 20th of Ramadan, we shifted our baggage, but Allah's Messenger came to us and said, "Whoever was i'tikaf should return to his place of i'tikaf, for I saw, i.e. was informed about the date of this night of Qadr, and saw myself prostrating in mud and water. When I returned to my place, the sky was overcast with clouds and it rained. By him who sent Muhammad with the truth, the sky was covered with clouds from the end of that day, and the mosque, which was roofed with leaf stalks of date palm trees, leaked with rain, and I saw the trace of mud and water over the nose of the Prophet and its tip."